Merriam-Webster dictionary defines a conspiracy as a secret plan made by two or more people to do something that is harmful or illegal. Now, usually when the topic of conspiracy theories is broached, there's a few eye rolls. But it's an undeniable fact that conspiracies are real. And no, I'm not talking about the unfounded claims that reptilian shapeshifters are projecting Illuminati symbolism into our brains. I'm talking about real historical events that have been proven to be government conspiracies. Yes, believe it or not, this government has conspired against its own people on more than one occasion. So to go over just a few of the most shocking declassified government conspiracies, I'm joined by BTS producer Manuel Rapolo. What's going on, man? What is up, man?
Wait, I'm confused. We're not talking about reptilian Illuminati shapeshifters?
Man, did I give you the wrong
I brought my costume. I thought we were going to do it the whole
Put on the lizard head.
All right.
No, we're going to be talking about real conspiracies that have been declassified. There are so many to count, Manny. I know that we only picked out kind of the 5 craziest ones. Let's start with my favorite, Operation Northwoods.
Start with the craziest. Why not?
It was a plan presented from Robert McNamara, the Joint Chiefs of Staff under President Kennedy. Obviously, we know at that time we were really irking for a reason to get into Cuba. So what was this all about?
Sure. So that's dead on, dead on. Well, the United States was really keen on going to war with Cuba. They needed the public support to do this. And really this, as far as conspiracy theories that have later on been revealed through declassified information, is really one of the scariest because it details what the United States is capable of just coming up with in terms of ideas. They needed the public support for a war with Cuba. This, of course, never happened, thank God, because of what they were doing was, what they were planning to do was really, really scary. They were talking about staged bombings in Cuba, fake landings by Cuban troops.
Florida, on U.S. soil.
Exactly. They were planning to blow up an American ship. There was plans to hijack and crash an airliner. So
that sounds familiar.
Right? But I mean, this is all thanks to declassified information that we found out thanks to none other than Oliver Stone, of all people, who through his film JFK, kind of re-galvanized that idea that we need to get the truth out about the JFK assassination conspiracy. 1997 comes around, 30 years after the assassination, and you've got, thousands and thousands of declassified documents titled Operations Northwoods. What is that? And come to find out that this was this huge conspiracy that was never carried out.
A false flag attack that never happened.
Right.
But the scariest part about this is that false flags are real and that this almost happened. I mean, it was presented all the way up in the chain of command up to the president.
Yeah, I mean,
thankfully Kennedy rejected it, but
I mean, false flags, we talk about these, they're so often dismissed as conspiracy theories. You can choose to buy into some or not, more recent ones, but you can look back in the historical thread. Remember the main,
this own government,
right? The Spanish-American War, the Mexican-American War. These were all started by false flag attacks.
Right, exactly. So it's not too crazy to talk about false flags as historical fact. MK Ultra. This is something kind of searching for the perfect truth serum here, thinking that was a possibility, and they just loved to dose people with acid, didn't they?
MK Ultra is one of the craziest ones. In fact, I've heard references to whether I don't know if the '60s counterculture influenced like MK Ultra or vis-a-vis, but they were experimenting with all kinds of psychotropic drugs, LSD, barbiturates as well. They were finding prostitutes, prisoners, the mentally ill, and they were experimenting with all kinds of crazy drugs on people. And I mean, you don't find out about this until much later on when it's found out that it was actually the CIA that was involved in doing this.
Right, and now the CIA has, I think, half of the world's acid supply, or LSD, I think, at least in this country. And it actually did spawn into the 60s, because it's funny to see that this actually started in the 50s. So you just picture FBI agents from the 50s dosing each other. I mean, it turned into this whole thing.
And if you've seen the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats, that's actually a pretty good example of that's kind of a film adaptation of
and there was
more or
a
less
subsect of MK Ultra where it's called Operation Midnight Climax, where they're actually drugging kind of your average Joes and putting them in rooms with prostitutes and doing just crazy stuff behind two-way mirrors and really twisted stuff there.
Right, and it goes back to what you were saying, trying to develop that perfect truth serum.
I wonder if they got that through watching prostitutes. Let's talk about the craziest one, prohibition alcohol poisoning.
I hadn't even heard about. I'd heard about prohibition. I didn't know what was going on. So prohibition going on in the 1920s, thanks to the 18th Amendment, of course, banning the wholesale of alcohol in the United States. I had no idea until I started researching what the FBI was doing under directions of the U.S. Department of Treasury, which was to poison alcohol. And there was actually the New York City Medical Examiner at the time in 1926, Charles Norris. I wonder if they called him Chuck Norris. Never mind. Charles Norris actually said practically all the liquor that is sold in New York today is toxic. So it was known, even at the time, that the FBI, the government, was actually poisoning people Look, prohibition was absolutely unenforceable at the time. So the fact that
why don't we just kill them?
Yeah, exactly.
We're just gonna kill them.
We're just gonna kill them. No, it's crazy. The stuff that they were putting in here was methane, formaldehyde, ammonia, arsenic, kerosene, acetone. That's paint thinner.
Unbelievable. Let's move on to Tuskegee, the experiment on poor black citizens of the United States.
Oh, they were calling them simpletons at the time. They were picking out uneducated, poor black citizens at the time.
And it was basically infecting them with syphilis.
Yeah, that's exactly what they were doing. This was going on between 1932 and 1972. They infected upwards of 400 individuals, many of them women. 28 people died directly from the disease. Several children were born with the disease. Of course, and it was horrible what they were doing to them. They were telling these people that, you know, we're looking into this mysterious new disease. Many of them didn't even know what was going on. They were told that they were being administered an antidote, but really they were just given aspirin. And they were conducting all sorts of experiments to find out how syphilis affects the black population. Really, really awful things. And even and keep in mind, this kept going well into the 70s, 1972, until it was discontinued. And it wasn't until 1997, under President Clinton, he was the first American president.
You know what? Let's stop actually administering syphilis to black populations. Let's just not do that. Let's not do that.
Yeah.
And we're sorry.
Yeah, that's pretty terrible.
And of course, Operation Mockingbird. You know, this was a program that the CIA, FBI was inserting operatives within all the major media networks. I mean, we're talking about all of them. Yeah. Papers, publications. And the thing that my whole question is this still going on today? Because they've really permeated throughout the culture of the establishment media. And really, we see the establishment media today, they just parrot the establishment. I'm like, wait, has this gone full circle? Or did you guys do a really good job setting the, the foundation here?
It's absolutely right. Because, I mean, this is Cold War mentality. And as we know, Cold War mentalities permeated well into today. But what they were doing, they were bribing heads of major publications and mainstream, even for the time during the Cold War, the New York Times, Associated Press, Reuters, they were really getting through to this. And you ask, is this still going on today? Well, we can look at the last National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA 2013, has a provision in there that legalizes propaganda. We found out last year that Central Command was giving these what are they?
Sock puppet
accounts, up to 10 accounts per serviceman to kind of promote this pro-America propaganda in foreign countries.
Exactly.
And I mean, do we really even need that? We have, like you said, we have the corporate media.
We have trolls. We already have trolls.
We have media. Exactly.
And we have the corporate media. No, it shows you how far-reaching this really is. And, you know, I think it's just really important to acknowledge these conspiracies, and they're all proven fact. And really, when we talk about conspiracy theories, we don't differentiate enough between the really unfounded ones and the real ones, because I think it's really hindering the dialogue and debate in this country of history and also just current events.
You say conspiracy theory, immediately people go with the reptilian Illuminati. It's dangerous to do that.
But there's a lot more. Thank you so much for breaking some of this down, Manuel Rapalo.
Thanks, Abby.